The wrist, such an incredibly complex joint, and if you train calisthenics, you just know that almost every single skill utilizes your wrist, so it's under constant stress and constant pressure, and that just means that conditioning them is so essential and so important to actually avoid chronic pain and injuries that are far too common in this sport. Now, before we dive into the conditioning routine itself, I want to briefly break down what's actually happening in your wrist and why these injuries actually happen. So your wrist is comprised of 8 small bones that have to glide perfectly to keep you pain-free, and this is supported by over 100 connective tissues that manage your stability as well as mobility through a full 360 range of motion. And because there's so much going on in such a small area, it's easy to see why it's so prone to injuries. And here's the thing, our wrists weren't actually designed to resist the large forces we put them under in calisthenics, especially at the disadvantaged angles we train in. So floor movements, planche work, handstands, and so many more. But injuries don't happen because the movement itself is dangerous. They happen because of an unprepared body. Now in calisthenics, I've seen 3 main reasons throughout my journey why these injuries actually happen. And the first one is being overtraining and overused. You're constantly loading your wrists without giving them time to actually adapt and actually recover. And then the second one is poor technique during high load skills. When your wrists aren't conditioned and your form breaks down, or you use the wrong technique under that pressure, that's when the strain, irritation, and even damage happens. Now, the third one is the lack of foundational conditioning. You jump into advanced skills without building the strength and without building that foundation your wrist needs before actually going into the skill. So these are just the most common factors for irritating, inflaming, and damaging the joint that I've seen throughout my journey, but there are so many more, so you need to be careful when it comes to your wrists. And in this video, I'm just going to go over and share a 10-minute routine that you can follow to build that resilience or help you need to recover. And one important but quick note, I want to say that every movement should be pain-free, and if you are experiencing sharp or severe pain, please do go seek professional help. So let's start off the routine with what I call the active range of motion block, because if you can't move your wrist through a full range of motion, you won't be able to build strength there. So the first exercise that I want to begin with is the wrist flexions and extensions. What you're doing here is flexing and extending the wrist as much as you can through the full range of motion without forcing. Remember, this should all be pain-free. The goal here is to lubricate the joint and increase synovial fluid between the 8 bones in your wrist. Basically, what this is in simple terms is the oil for the joint. If you want to understand this concept a little bit deeper, there is a great video by Dr. Yad and Professor Keith Barr that breaks down the joint adaptation and recovery really well. I'll link it in the description below. So moving slowly and deliberately through your full range of motion. If you feel restricted in one direction, that's telling you something where you need to work on your mobility. And next up, we have the ulnar and radial deviations. This is an up and down movement of your wrist, focusing on the thumb side, so the radial side, and the pinky side, which is the ulnar side. In calisthenics, when you're performing skills such as the handstand or planche, especially on P-bars, your wrist is managing these deviation forces. So it's essential to work on these ranges of motion. And finally, in this block, we're doing wrist rotations. These are clockwise and counterclockwise, full circular movements. In real training, your wrist deals with forces from multiple directions simultaneously. So training it in multiple directions builds a strong and resilient joint. And make sure you're performing these exercises on both sides. We don't want to be creating any imbalances. Now, the second block is the decompression block. This one is crucial, especially if you've been doing a lot of exercises that compress the wrists, mainly from pushing movements. For example, when you're performing push skills like the planche or handstand, your wrist is under constant compression. This builds up over time and can irritate your wrist joint capsule. This block relieves that compression. So we're starting with wrist distraction pulls. What you're doing here is gently pulling your hand away from your body to relieve this compression. You're grabbing your hand with the other hand and gently pulling away, creating space between the bones in your wrist. This gives your joint capsule relief from the constant loading. The next exercise is the wrist pinch rotations. Here, you're grabbing your wrist and you want to pinch your joint with your index as well as thumb to kind of open up the joint like before, then rotating while maintaining that space. This allows your joint to move through different angles while being decompressed, which is much gentler on the joint capsule. Now, moving forward into the third block, which is the stretching block. This targets the tight tissues, so your flexors and extensors that get constantly overworked in calisthenics. These tight tissues are often the culprit behind chronic wrist pain. So we're going to first start off with floor wrist extension holds. So you want to be palms down on the floor and lean back gently. stretching the extensor muscles on top of your forearm. Stay pain-free and breathe through the stretch. This should be, if I can say, uncomfortably comfortable, if that makes sense. Next is floor wrist flexion holds. Same position, but palms are now facing up. Fingers pointing towards you and leaning back. This stretches the flexor muscles on the underside of your forearm. Then finally, we have the floor radial and ulnar stretch holds. These stretch both the thumb side and pinky side of your wrist. Both sides needs equal attention. Imbalances can lead to compensations and injuries, and that is what we want to avoid. Now, the final block is the strengthening block. This is where you build resilience against the future loading. Light resistance is key here. You don't want to be pushing too hard. You're not building massive strength, you're just conditioning the joint to be strong. We're starting with banded wrist flexion and extensions. You're using a light resistant band that pulls your hand downward. What you're doing is controlling that downward force, that's the eccentric portion, and then flexing your wrist upwards against the same portion. The key here is going through the whole range of motion. You're building strength through the entire range, not just one direction. This full range strength is what prevents injuries during your training. And next we have banded radial and ulnar deviations. The band again pulling downwards, you're controlling that downward force and then moving your hand upward against it, focusing on the radial thumb side and then also the ulnar pinky side. Again, you're building strength through the full range of motion in these deviation patterns. And finally, we're doing banded pronation twist. Focus on this one movement at a time. You're rotating your forearm with your palm rotating downward against the light resistance. Control the movement through the full range of motion. Once you've completed this exercise, then move on to the supination twist. Your palm is now rotating upwards against the same light resistant band. These isolated movements ensure you're building balanced strength in every direction your wrist needs to handle during training. So that's the end of the routine. And remember, this is a light routine and every movement should feel pain-free. And here's a picture of the full routine for you to take a screenshot of, come back to, and perform in your own time. There's a big misconception that when you have your wrist pain or injury, you should just take full rest. That's not the way to recover, especially with joints and connective tissues. Your ligaments and connective tissues need blood flow to heal. This routine keeps your wrist moving safely while increasing blood flow. There are two ways to use this routine. If you're dealing with wrist injury or pain, do this routine as often as your body allows. It's gentle enough to promote recovery without irritation. As you feel better, gradually increase frequency, but rest when needed. Listen to your body. And if your wrists do feel healthy, use this as an ongoing conditioning alongside your regular training. Do as often as your body allows, but rest when needed. This builds resilience so you never end up with the chronic pain. And an important timing note, do this routine a couple hours before or after your workout. This way you're not adding stress right after or right before your intense training, but still getting the conditioning and recovery benefits. Your wrist health is something that is non-negotiable if you want long-term calisthenics journey. Invest in it now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.